my name is Megan, and today I'm going to be showing you a really simple zombie makeup look. So this isn't necessarily something that you want to do for a film, but you could use it for a film. But this is basically more for something like if you're going to a Halloween party or a live theater. That's what this video is actually created for, is for a live theater. But I'm going to show you this really simple zombie look, and this is using really easily accessible costume makeup. So this is something you could buy at like Party Fair or Party City, whatever, a place like that. Any costume shop is going to have these really simple makeup. I have these little small palettes. Up from that we have this, it's Graftobian brand. The Cream Makeup Severe Trauma is the name of this wheel. Also, alternatively, you can get these little stacks of makeup. This is the Cinema Secrets brand, but they're all essentially the same thing. We want to make sure we have our purples, some yellows, greens, blacks, and some whites or very fair skin tone color in order to create that undead look. I'm going to be using these little wedge sponges and just a few makeup brushes. I'm using these because I feel like these are something that you can buy just at like CVS or Walgreens, and they're fairly inexpensive, and if you're doing makeup on a lot of zombies, they're disposable, so you don't have to wash in between. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a light color. So you can use either a very light foundation color, but in this case, Laura is pretty fair, so I can actually use a white. And I'm going to just do a very thin layer of white to just make her skin look just very undead and washed out. Zombies are really pale. They don't have enough blood, I guess, pumping through their veins. And if it's too light, if you have like darker skin, you can just use a light shade of foundation that's just a few shades lighter than your dark skin tone. And I'm just using my sponge, and I'm just applying it all over her face, and I'm using this kind of like bouncing motion. And that's just going to give me smooth, even coverage. So from here, we have a couple options for where we can go. And it kind of depends on the backstory of our zombie. So we can go with just a lot of like reds and purples around the eyes and make her look like very infected and bloody. Or we can think about what kind of trauma this zombie has experienced, and maybe we can start adding some bruising. So I'm going to add some greens and yellows because when I think of a zombie, I do think of them as being very green and full of just bacteria and grossness. So let's make Laura gross. I'm going to take my trauma wheel, but you can also use your Cinema Secrets stack. Any of these green cream-based makeups are going to work fine. And I happen to find that these cream-based makeups are a little bit easier to use for somebody who is a little bit more inexperienced. If you want to use water-activated makeup, that's great. Go ahead and use that. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive. I thought this was a little bit easier and more affordable for beginners, but I mean, if you want to try it, go ahead, rock on. And it can also help to have a reference photo to look at. As you can see, this green is kind of patchy, and the way that I'm putting it on is very randomized, and that's kind of a key to any really special effects look, is randomization. Because when you have something disgusting happen in real life, it doesn't happen in an orderly pattern. So we want the makeup to look random. So I'm adding my greens, my yellows, and you can also add some grays. And don't worry if it gets a little bit messed up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Because this, like, a zombie is not clean and perfect looking. It's supposed to look gross, so it's okay if you've got some mistakes in there. And there are as many different ways to do a zombie as there are makeup artists out there, so you know, you can experiment and try some different things. And if you have a kind of fluffy, flatter, dense brush like this, I know I said fluffy and dense, kind of weird. you can use that, and it's gonna kind of just help speed things up a little bit, but you don't need the brush by any means. You can do this with the wedge. So what we're doing to create this infected look around Laura's eyes, we're applying our reds and purples from our bruise wheel to her eye area. And look up. I'm having her look up and away from the brush, just to ensure that she doesn't blink or twitch, because she's less likely to be bothered by the brush if she can't see it. Close your eye. So I apply my reds and my purples, and then I take my sponge and I just diffuse it out. And depending on what stage your zombie is in, it's going to look more or less red around this area. Like if somebody's just been bitten, you can have less red around the area. And as they get sicker and sicker, you're going to add more and more red. The next technique that I'm going to do is a highlight and contour technique. And what that is going to do is it's going to bring out her bones and make her look more emaciated, sunken in, and just kind of hungry. So we're using just a matte eyeshadow palette. We don't want an eyeshadow palette that has any shimmer in it, because that's going to kind of defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do with this highlight and contour. And I've got some different brushes. Some eyeshadow brushes and some blush brushes. And the good thing about this is this powder is also going to help set your cream makeup. So I'm taking some blacks, some grays, and some browns, and I'm going to apply them just under her cheekbone. And then I'm going to blend them out. And if you're really light, the black may be too stark of a contrast. So you can use grays, you can use browns, whatever. And you can always go back in and lighten it up with some white. Kind of make the bones pop a little bit more. And if you don't have eyeshadow, you can also really lay on your heavy gray cream makeup for this also. It's all about the blending, really. And I'm going to hollow out this area of her temples by putting more gray there. That kind of works with the shape of the skull. I can go under her chin. And I can go around her collarbones. So I'm adding my black under the bones. And the collarbones, I mean, if you have a costume that's showing the collarbones, this is like essential. This is really going to make it look zombie-ish. And don't worry too much about it looking dirty. Your zombie probably is dirty. Zombies don't shower. I'm darkening it a lot back here by her ear, right under that cheekbone. If you're having trouble finding the cheekbone or trying to decide where to put the dark, you can just kind of feel around, and right here is where you want to put your dark, just under that bone. And you can come back in with your white and lighten up the bones. And you can continue this makeup down the body. Really, anywhere that the skin is showing, you kind of, want to darken and bruise up. So, this is a decent stopping point for a person who has just been infected. If we want to make them a little bit sicker, we can start adding things like blood, liquid latex to really create that corroded flesh look, which is what I'm going to show you now. If you're stopping here, if your person has just been bit, what you want to do is you want to take, a lot of these cream makeups come with this setting powder. This is really great because it stops it from rubbing off. The cream is really slick. So powder is going to absorb the excess oil and stop it from coming off. So I'm just taking a little bit of this powder. I'm putting it into the lid, just tapping a little bit out. And then I can just dip a brush in here and swirl it around. It's also going to help set it if around the eye area, if you have red and purple eyeshadows, use those. That's going to stay a lot better than just the cream makeup by itself. And just diffuse and blend it out. So we can stop here, or we can add her bite where she's been bitten. So we're going to add some blood to Laura to make her look a little bit grosser. And I'm just taking one of these gel blood packets, and then they also sell just like little bottles that you can buy of blood. And we can put it around her mouth. And different bloods are going to be different colors. I want this blood a little bit darker, so I'm going to add some of my red. Gotta watch you don't get too vampire-y. Okay, so she has a little bit of blood coming from her mouth. She's recently infected. Okay, and now I'm going to show you some more steps. You can stop here. This is a really good stopping point for just your really basic zombie. Just keep watching for the next section where I'm going to show you how to do more elaborate techniques. To begin creating our zombie skin, we're going to apply a layer of liquid latex to the forehead. We need to clean off any cream makeup that may be on the forehead before we get started. We apply a thin layer of Vaseline to the hairline and the eyebrow because liquid latex sticks to hair, and we don't want to pull out any of the hair when we're pulling off our liquid latex. Whatever brush you use to apply the liquid latex is going to get ruined, so make sure you use one that you do not care about. We begin by applying the liquid latex in layers to the forehead. We have to let the liquid latex dry in between layers. I applied about 4 layers to Laura's forehead before I was finally finished. To create additional texture on her cheek, I take a piece of tissue paper with the edges ripped off and I apply it to the liquid latex. I then put another thin layer of liquid latex on top of the tissue paper to hold it in place. Once my liquid latex is dry, I have to come back in and colorize the skin. I use my Graftobian wheel with green, yellow, and flesh tone colors to create the look of rotting skin. I use my fingers to create little holes in the liquid latex on Laura's forehead. I use my purples and my reds to colorize this area to make it look bloody. I add black eyeshadow to the holes to create shading. I finish off the look by adding coagulated blood to her open wounds and also to her nose and mouth. And now Laura's zombie look is complete. Alright, so for our second makeup look, I'm going to be showing you what to do if your zombie has a beard, some facial hair perhaps. And this is just going to be a little bit more of like a cartoonish, a little bit more extreme zombie than what we saw on Laura. Okay, so I'm going to start by turning his face green. And he's going to be a lot greener than Laura was. He's a little bit more cartoonish, a little bit more extreme zombie. He's been dead a little bit longer. And I'm not going to bother with the white right now. If I want some more white, I'll add it later. Right now I'm just using my greens and yellows and my flesh tone from the Bruise Wheel. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our blues and purples to make it look like he is a zombie who has just been feeding. So we're going to be really careful working around like his beard area and everything like that because he does have this stubble. We don't want to pull it out with the liquid latex. So rather than using liquid latex, we're going to use our scab blood. And this is going to look really coagulated, really clumpy, and we'll just put the liquid latex on areas that do not have hair. I use my Graftobian wheel with my reds and my purples, and I put it all around his mouth. I also set it with a little bit of black eyeshadow to
absorb some of the cream and make sure it stays put. Then I take the coagulated blood and I put it all around the mouth area. I stipple it on and I let it be very clumpy in order to create that scabbed up look. I use some black eyeshadow and I contour underneath in the sockets of his eyes to give the illusion of dark circles, and I also contour underneath the cheekbones to make his face look more drawn and sickly.
So what we're going to do now is we are going to create a stab wound on Bobby. This is totally optional. You could end the zombie where we ended it before, but this is just a little something extra if you want to learn how to do this cool special effect. So as we all know, the only way to kill a zombie is a massive wound to the head. So we are going to put a stab wound right in the middle of Bobby's head. You could put this stab wound that I'm going to show you how to do kind of could work anywhere on the body, but for this zombie, we're going to put it right in the middle of the forehead. So I'm going to be using this stuff called modeling wax, and you really just need this and the trauma wheel that I showed you before, and then the blood. It could be liquid blood or it could be scab blood. Either one is going to work. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to roll up our sleeves. The modeling wax is very, very sticky and it just gets all over everything. So you're going to want to roll up your sleeves, pull off any rings that you have on. And get your hair out of the way if you can, just because you don't want this stuff in your hair. All right, we're ready to create our stab wound. So I'm going to take Vaseline, petroleum jelly, and I'm going to cover my hands. And it's going to be a lot easier for me to work with the modeling wax if the modeling wax is not just completely sticking to my hands. Okay. Then I'm going to open my modeling wax with my very greasy hands. You might want to open it beforehand. And you're going to take just like a spatula. If you have a makeup spatula, that's great. I'm assuming most people don't, so I'm going to use a butter knife. And you're going to pull some of it out. Be very, very careful if your hands are slippery. This might be something you want somebody else to do. And the warmth of your body is going to kind of help you shape it. And you can shape it and smooth it out. So you can, this modeling wax is very versatile. You can use it to create a lot of different features. So I'm going to kind of roll it into more of a kind of long, skinny shape, like such. And I'm going to apply it right to the middle of Bobby's head.
I'm blending that tubular shape into the middle of his forehead by gradually smoothing it out with my fingers. I want it to look like you can't tell where the modeling wax ends and where Bobby's skin begins.
What we're going to do is we're going to take either the back end of a butter knife, and we are just going to create the stab wound. So we're going to press gently into this. And that's going to create the dimension and texture. And we can open it up a little more so it's kind of gaping.
I use my Graftobian reds and purples and place them inside of the stab wound with my brush. I then top it off with some scab blood. Liquid blood would also work just as well. I go back in with some greens and yellows and paint over the wax to make sure that the color matches the rest of the skin. And now Bobby's stab wound is complete.